So you might have heard that Sony is suing Tencent over a game that looks an awful lot like Horizon. It's called Light of Motiram, and I'll show you some of the trailer and some images and stuff in a minute so you can see just how much of a ripoff it really is. But this lawsuit actually reveals some things that make this whole situation even more interesting. Spicy details. And it actually gives us some interesting bits of info about the Horizon franchise itself. So Light of Motiram was revealed this past November, and the reveal trailer, along with basically all the marketing images, look so much like Horizon that it's just kind of ridiculous. Now, the gameplay itself isn't actually much like Horizon. In fact, it looks more like a ripoff of some other games like Monster Hunter and Ark Survival. It's more melee combat focused and it supports multiplayer. But what Sony is focused on here is that the visual style and the overall premise of the game are pretty much just straight up copying Horizon. In their own words, it's a slavish clone. The game world is a lush post-apocalyptic landscape inhabited by giant robotic creatures. You fight those creatures with primitive weapons, you explore ancient ruins to unlock secrets of Earth's past. I mean, it just goes on and on. Some of the images and shots in the trailers look so much like Horizon material that I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they just straight up ripped images and frames from Horizon trailers and ran them through some sort of generative AI tool to churn out their own slightly altered versions. And don't even get me started on the music. Just listen to this for a second. Okay, ready? Here we go. Now, we won't watch these all the way through, but let me just show you some of the more obvious rip-off examples in these trailers. So actually, if we just back up for a second, this opening shot, this is actually kind of a rip-off of Destiny. And then there's another ripoff of Destiny here in a second that I'll show you. But this little scanner thing here, which kind of looks like a Focus 2, but it looks more like a Ghost in Destiny. It's like a little flying robot that follows you around in Destiny. So yeah, here you've got the Ghost thing flying around, the little Destiny ripoff again. And then the real Destiny ripoff is right here.
Wake up.
That wake up, that's like lifted straight from a Destiny 2 cutscene. Straight from a cutscene.
Eyes up, Guardian.
Okay, and then we've got some red grass there. Some different types of machines. Obviously, that's like a tall neck style machine. Tremor tusks. Longhorns, water wings. This right here looks a lot like the Zenith base, tribal. I mean, you can have tribal, villages. I don't have a problem with that. But the headdress looks so much like a Banuk headdress. The glider's kind of a Zelda ripoff. Okay, so this is very much like entering a cauldron. It's like basically a cave, but also has advanced technology, energy barrier, markings like Banuk markings. This shot right here is almost like directly lifted from a Horizon promotional trailer. Now, I don't know enough about law to tell you how solid of a case they have here, but I did read the whole lawsuit, and I gotta say, Sony makes a pretty convincing case. They show a bunch of examples how Light of Motiram copies elements of Horizon, and they also point out some really specific things, like the fact that there's red grass you can hide in, which might seem kind of insignificant, but if you think about it for a second, you create your own character in this game, which means you can pick any hair color. So there's no reason the grass you hide in has to be red. The only reason for that is to intentionally make it look like Horizon as much as possible. So even though the game itself doesn't really play much like Horizon, Sony is looking to nail them for the overall presentation of the game. Basically, their main argument is that Light of Motiram looks so similar to Horizon that consumers are going to get confused into thinking that it's actually some kind of official Horizon spin-off game. And they're claiming that'll damage sales of actual Horizon games. And honestly, I think they're right. I mean, look, I know I'm super biased here, but I've even had people in my community and in YouTube comments literally tell me they thought this was a new Horizon game, at least before they realized after a moment that something was off. And these are like serious Horizon fans saying that. So I think the average consumer that's maybe familiar with Horizon but not a big fan would easily be confused into thinking Light of Motiram is an actual Horizon game, especially since some people have a general awareness that Guerrilla is actually working on an official Horizon multiplayer game. Nope, it's not canceled. We'll come back to that in a second. But what Sony reveals in the lawsuit gets even crazier. See, they explain that Tencent actually approached Sony twice to ask if they could officially license the Horizon IP. They wanted Sony's permission to make this game. The first time they asked was last year at the Game Developers Conference, and it wasn't just like an informal conversation on the show floor or something like that. No, Tencent had actually prepared a presentation and requested an audience with Sony to make their pitch. They told Sony they wanted to create a spin-off that took Horizon into an Eastern setting and added gameplay elements like multiplayer, survival gameplay mechanics, and pet taming. They even went so far as to create concept renderings like this one of Aloy on the Great Wall of China. They really wanted to license the Horizon IP, but Sony told them no. Now, we don't have the exact reason for why they said no. The lawsuit doesn't really go into that. But I think we can assume, on the whole, that Sony and Guerrilla wanted to maintain full control of one of their most valuable IPs, because they describe it as such in the lawsuit. And this is where we actually get one of the cool new details revealed about the Horizon franchise itself. Horizon, as a franchise, has sold over 38 million copies as of July this year, which is very good. I'll show you how that compares to some other big PlayStation franchises in a second. But I know a lot of people wonder if this total includes PlayStation Plus and the Play at Home promotion, where Sony made Zero Dawn one of the free game options you could choose. But no, I don't think so. See, typically the term copies sold means individual copies of the game purchased by a consumer. People playing the game through a subscription service like PS Plus or getting a free copy through some sort of promotion usually doesn't count towards that. It's true, we don't know for sure. The lawsuit doesn't specify. But the last time we got an official total sales number for Horizon back in April 2023, that total was 32.7 million, and there was a note that clearly stated it did not include PS Plus or Play at Home copies. That was about a year before Forbidden West came to PC as well, so I think it's pretty safe to say the 38 million total we have today doesn't include PS Plus or Play at Home copies either. But let's compare that to some other PlayStation franchises. The Last of Us has sold about 37 million copies. Ghost of Tsushima has sold 13 million. I'm sure that will at least double after Yote. Ratchet & Clank is at 40 million. Uncharted is at 41 million. Spider-Man is at 50 million. And God of War is at 66 million. So that's how Horizon stacks up if you compare simply by total sales. But of course, these franchises all started at very different times. Some have been around for a long time. A more apples to apples way to compare them is to look at the rate each franchise has sold over its entire lifespan. In other words, take the total number of franchise sales and divide that by how long the franchise has been around. When you do that, you see Horizon is actually Sony's second fastest selling IP ever. The only one that beats it is Spider-Man, which isn't even really their IP, and it's a franchise that's been around since 1962, giving it a massive head start in terms of global media presence over any of the PlayStation first-party IPs. But the point is, when Sony says Horizon is one of their most valuable IPs in the lawsuit, they really mean that. So it makes sense that they want to maintain full control of Horizon. But here's where it gets kind of spicy. See, after Sony said no to Tencent's first pitch, they found out that Light of Motiram had actually already been in development for at least a year. The trademark was filed in 2023. And Sony also seems to have gained access to some information on the game's development through other means. So Tencent started working on Light of Motiram without permission and then asked Sony if it would be okay. Then Sony said no, that was the first time, and then about 6 months after that, this past November, the reveal trailer for Light of Motiram dropped, showing that Tencent decided to go ahead anyway. Now, I have to give it to Tencent here. They had some balls, because when Sony confronted them about it earlier this year after the reveal trailer, they asked again if they could license the IP. I mean, I don't know how they thought that was going to go over well, but I guess they figured they'd give it another shot. Of course, Sony told them no again, and here we are with the lawsuit being filed. Sony is effectively requesting an immediate freeze on any further marketing of Light of Motiram. They're asking that it be blocked from releasing. They want all content containing infringements delivered to them and then destroyed, and they want to be compensated for damages due to infringements at a rate of $150,000 for each instance of infringement. Basically, they want this game totally shut down. Now, like I said before, even though I think most of the arguments they make in the lawsuit are sound, I don't actually know how strong of a case this is. We'll just have to see how that plays out in the courts. But I do think it's super interesting, especially when you consider Guerrilla has been working on their own multiplayer Horizon game, the Horizon Online project, for over 7 years. If you had heard it was canceled, I won't bore you with all the details, but basically those reports were wrong because they mistranslated and misinterpreted a South Korean journalist who later clarified he wasn't even talking about Horizon. If you go check the articles that claimed Horizon Online was canceled, a bunch of them now have an update explaining that they were wrong. A great example of why you shouldn't trust headlines, especially from the plethora of low-effort gaming news sites. Also, Guerrilla is actively hiring for the online project with positions open on their website as we speak, and they have been for years, with dozens of job postings over that time. If you hang around my Discord or streams, then you know I'm kind of obsessed with the online project, and that I'm shamelessly the conductor of the hype train for it. I actually lost a bet related to that. If you know, you know. But we do have a few new important updates on the online project since the last video I did on it. First, I think a lot of people will be happy to know that we have some clear indications that you will be able to play this game solo if you want to. The clearest indication of that is actually from an older job post for a senior quest designer, which states that this person will design and build interesting combat scenarios and activities for both single player and multiplayer experiences. So it does sound like at least significant chunks of this game can be played alone, which is good. I think for the online project to be successful, they need to make sure it appeals to existing Horizon fans, and having the option to play it as a single player experience is going to be critical for that. So that's definitely good to see. But back in March, they also made a key hire for a more important role, bringing Chris Proctor on as a design director. Now, you probably don't know who Chris Proctor is, unless you're a Destiny fan. Chris was loved by the Destiny community because he was in charge of the team that designed all the weapons and gear in Destiny 2, and he led the design of some really cool and popular weapons.
But let me just say, I said a long time ago that I would not lose faith in Bungie unless two individuals were no longer there. One of them being Chris Proctor, the other one being the game director, Tyson Green. This is concerning. Let me just say this about Chris, man. There's not a single aspect that you can bring up in Destiny that this man doesn't have a hand in. I mean, he literally all over the place knew what was being worked on, from his own design philosophies to the team that he was overseeing here. The dude has played a huge role from a weapon design and a huge role in sandbox choices that have been made over the years. And I have been saying it for a long time. And like a lot of issues we have in Bungie and Destiny 2, if there's one area that has done very, very good, has been consistent. And look, I'm comparing this to D2 Vanilla. Y'all remember how that was. If there's one area that Destiny has been doing well in, it's been in the sandbox area. This is a huge loss, guys.
But he left Bungie for Guerrilla earlier this year, and he's a design director on the online project. That means he's one of the people making high-level decisions. We don't know exactly which parts of the game he's in charge of, but given his experience on Destiny, it's very likely that at least one thing he's responsible for is weapon design and balancing. Now, like I mentioned, he was only hired this past March, and you might say, well, that probably means the game is still a long way off if they only recently brought in someone like that. But I don't think so. I think the game is pretty close to a reveal, and Chris was brought on to help polish things, maybe make some adjustments before launch, and then I would imagine he'd have a bigger impact on future content updates to the game. I know I might sound like a broken record saying the online project is going to be revealed soon, but there's basically a smoking gun. See, at the end of 2024, Guerrilla had a posting up for a release QA intern, which stated that the applicant would acquire both theoretical knowledge and practical experience to ensure the game is prepared for launch. If you don't know, QA means quality assurance, and release QA would be doing quality checks on a game before it releases. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't imagine any game studio would bring on an intern to do quality checks on their high-profile, unannounced game unless it was actually close to being revealed. It'd just be too risky, and also it just doesn't make sense to have anyone doing quality checks for release until you're actually getting close to the end of development. Now, I found out who this intern was, not through any secret means, just by doing some good old research, and I'm not going to reveal who they are here because I don't want anyone pestering them. But the important thing is that person just finished their internship in June. So if they're all done with the internship, I think that's a very strong indicator that the game is getting close to a reveal. Our next window for that will be late September at a PlayStation event. After that, I think we'll see some kind of open beta in early or mid 2026, with the full launch happening in the back half of 2026. If you want to dive into more details on the online project, I go over those in that video right here. And I talk about my estimates for a Horizon 3 launch as well. As always, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you over there in just a second.